All right, this is the English assignment sheet for the formal research paper. This is the last paper of the course. So I'm just going to read it and then add some insight to it. So, based upon the readings, PowerPoint lectures, and in class group discussions concerning the topic of single sex colleges, you will research and develop a formal research paper using the writing prompt below. So the purpose is for you to develop and sustain an argument stance, analyze arguments that are on the topic, and then synthesize ideas. So your writing prompt is based upon the topic of single sex colleges and whether or not they are still necessary. So you're writing and developing a formal research paper based upon the following writing prompt. Women's colleges, once common, in the United States have been going coeducational in increasing numbers in the past 40 years. Many people argue that women's colleges are unnecessary now that all of the major United States colleges and universities are open to women, but others, citing studies that show that graduates of women's colleges are more successful than women who graduate from co ed colleges, argue that women's colleges still have much to offer. Are single sex colleges obsolete, or do they still provide an important alternative to co-ed colleges? Support your position with reasons and or examples from your own experience, observations, or reading. And so when you're thinking about this prompt, you are thinking about assessing it um, a from both past perspectives of single sex colleges or the necessity of single sex colleges, why certain colleges had to create only women's colleges, why certain colleges had to create only African American type colleges, and then, of course, why there were only male colleges during a certain time period. And so, given the fact that many people can go to school, many colleges are now coeducational, meaning both male and female can attend. Do you think that they are still necessary? Obsolete meaning necessary or not necessary. And so the writing prompt, the question is, are single sex colleges obsolete, or do they still provide an important alternative to co-ed colleges? So you will need to develop a stance and sustain the argument throughout your paper. You must also incorporate the arguments and counter arguments on the topic using the reference sources housed on eCampus, and you are critiquing those sources. So you are building an argument. It's not going to be perfect, right? Because this is English 1301, but you are expected to take a stance. So if you believe that single sex college is obsolete, you're going to say, yes, single sex colleges are obsolete. We no longer need them because they they no longer provide an important alternative, right? So single sex colleges are obsolete. Or you could say single sex colleges are not obsolete. They still provide an important alternative to co-ed colleges. So you are taking a stance and then, of course, creating the reasons based upon that stance. You will create the following sections. Use only the subtitles below. Type the subtitles into your paper. Do not reinterpret, meaning do not, if a subtitle is introduction, type it as you see it on the paper on this English assignment sheet, or history, facts, and statistics, just as you see it on this English assignment sheet. Do not reinterpret and say and write history. That's not what I want you to do. The goal of this assignment is to think critically about the arguments, not just provide a summary on the topic at large and make a case. Do not create additional subtitles. So what you see here is the grade distribution and then the titles that you're going to type into your paper: introduction, history, facts, and statistics, literature review, the case for transgender students, and then, of course, conclusion and works cited. You are not typing MLA, of course, and you're not typing argument, and of course, you're not typing total points possible, but just your main titles, your main subtitles. So, introduction. You're introducing the topic. Your stance should be in this paragraph as a thesis statement. Your thesis statement should reflect a direct response to the writing prompt, not a deviation. Choose a position. Do not argue both sides. And that's a little misleading because you are going to present both sides in terms of balancing your argument, but whatever you believe from the beginning of the paper to the end of the paper is what should be clear. So if you believe single sex colleges are obsolete at the beginning of the paper, then that should be clear as an argument at the end of the paper as well. Okay. History, facts, and statistics present the history, facts, and statistics on the subject of single-sex colleges, so you will have access to resources on eCampus. And you are including women's colleges timelines, rationale. You're also including information about Title IX legislation here. So your sources then would be single-sex colleges, history, Title IX, equal protection clause, 14th Amendment, and all of those sources are housed on eCampus. A literature review is where you're going to attempt to build an argument within your paper, within this section. So for this section, you are summarizing the arguments on the topic and providing an analysis of those arguments. So your goal is two-part. So the first goal is summarize the following. You are creating three separate paragraphs. This is worth 100 points. Make sure that you understand that you are creating three separate paragraphs for goal number one. So the Harvard Political Review, which we will go over, the one school that still remains a single-sex college. Okay, so Mount Holyoke is one of those colleges. And then one school that was originally a single-sex college but became coeducational, Vassar is one of those colleges. You are creating paragraphs for each of the source materials. So literature review is going to have three separate paragraphs. Then you're going to have a fourth paragraph within this section. That's why it's very important to add the subtitles so that you can not confuse yourself. Use MLA, create an additional fourth paragraph. By the end of this literature review section, you should have at least 4 total paragraphs. The links are available on eCampus. You may choose any school for a single-sex college still in existence and any school for a single-sex college that became coeducational. So goal number 2 is choosing 1 to 3 arguments from any of the sources. So for instance, these are 3 different types of arguments. One is a Harvard Political Review that's exploring the different types of the argument for or against single-sex colleges. That's one argument. Another argument is if you still have a college that is still a single-sex college, even though there are co-educational colleges available to all students, that's an argument, right? They're saying that we are still necessary. But if you have that same, you have another single-sex college, you have another school that was initially single-sex college but became coeducational like Vassar, that's also an argument. They're saying that single-sex colleges are no longer necessary and that coeducational institutions are the way to go. So these are 3 different types of arguments. That's why I call them or label them as 3 arguments. So then your fourth paragraph within this section would be you choosing 1 to 3 of these arguments. You can choose 1. You can choose whatever is going on in Harvard Political Review, or you can choose the single-sex college, or you can choose a single-sex college that went coeducational as an argument. And you're going to critique and analyze that argument. Okay. And so then your sources would be HPR, Harvard Political Review, single-sex college, single-sex to co-ed college. Okay. And all of the sources in eCampus are marked. But do make note of this. This is your literature review section. Your literature review section should have 4 paragraphs under that subtitle. And I will check. So make sure that you understand the difference. And so then the case for transgender students is worth 50 points. You are not agreeing with the concept of transgender students. You're only looking at this from a leadership planning, leadership preparation standpoint, that this particular issue is going to cross your desk as a leader in preparation. And so you need to consider the laws that apply to this particular concept. So based upon the arguments presented from the single-sex colleges and in considering the Title IX legislation, make a case for either accepting or rejecting transgender students. You will not be penalized for personal views, but you must use evidence and provide sound arguments, including rebuttal. So you can make the case that I don't think that transgender students should be admitted to single-sex colleges. You're not going to be penalized. This section is largely a completion part of your paper. So you must use at least one of the source materials from the transgender links on eCampus. Quote directly, cite appropriately. So then your source would be transgender. So then conclusion would be you summarizing the paper and proposing new suggestions. The MLA, all in-text citations must be properly formatted. The works cited should be the last page of your paper. It must be formatted properly. You must sustain your argument. So you can't say at the beginning of your paper, you can't write at the beginning of your paper that you believe single sex colleges are obsolete, meaning that they are no longer necessary. And then at the end of the paper say, oh, I think we need to go on ahead and keep single sex colleges. That means you have lost your argument. You have not sustained your argument. If you believe one thing, you need to make sure that you end on that one thing. You can always change your mind in your personal life, no problem. But for this paper, you must be able to sustain your argument. And the total points possible is 300. Length requirement is 5 to 8 pages. If you choose 5 pages, you need a full fifth page. 3/4 is not that bad. I'm fine with that. You will need to format the document for MLA, works cited. Please refer to previous notes, handouts, MLA topics, videos on how to do the page setup. You must use the required source materials where they are appropriate within each of the sections, which are available as links on eCampus and the PowerPoint as well. You may research additional materials. You may use additional materials from previous readings. Format the materials when and where appropriate. There is no limit to additional sources. However, you must use the required sources. You cannot substitute. Make sure you understand that. Make sure that you integrate all of the required sources within your paper. Okay, this paper requires quote integration within all sections, excluding introduction and conclusion. You may choose to place quotes in those sections, but they are not required. But you're not required to do so. Points will be deducted for plagiarized content. That is content where you are directly quoting from the source and you have not added quotation marks or a citation at the end, or both. Especially when there's no clear attempt to cite the source, right? So a deduction of points is at my discretion. Do consider the severity of plagiarism. You may fail the paper. Make sure not to miss sections because you will receive a point deduction or points deduction for that. So if you miss the whole literature review section, that's 100 points. So do keep that in mind. Missing elements, 10 points. Missing source material, 10 points. These are direct quotes. Missing pages, 10 points. Okay. The last page, again, could be 3/4 or full page, may be acceptable. And if you write on a completely different topic, meaning that if you submit something that is completely different from what is required in your paper, that is an automatic 0. Do keep that in mind. Okay, so the due date for this is between Friday, December 9th, and Saturday. You cannot submit on a Sunday. That will not give me enough time to grade the paper and submit for grades. And so late papers will be accepted at 60-point deduction. Sunday would be too late for grading purposes. And then, of course, make sure that you don't plagiarize. So this is the English assignment sheet for the formal research paper.